Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm doing a video on Doctor Who, as in my view Doctor Who is one of the holy grails of missing television shows. You know, it's also one of the most successful shows as it's ran for over 60 years on the BBC. However, many episodes from the early years of the BBC along with Doctor Who are missing. However, there's a lot more than what it seems to be that is missing from the BBC's archive. In this video, I will go over all those. Starting with the first Doctor, William Hartnell. The first Doctor ran from an unearthly child in 1963 to the 10th planet in 1966, and during that time, around 44 episodes of William Hartnell's era are missing. They are Marco Polo, all 7 parts, The Reign of Terror 4 and 5, The Crusades 2 and 4, Galaxy 4 1, 2, and 4, Mission to the Unknown, which was a 1-episode special as it was for the cast to take a break. It is missing in its entirety. All 4 parts of The Mythmakers, The Daleks Master Plan, parts 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 12. Episode 7 this batch is one of the only episodes of the black and white era to be permanently missing. I won't go over that now, but I will go over that in another video later this year. All 4 parts of The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, The Celestial Toymaker parts 1, 2, and 3, all 4 parts of The Savages, all 4 parts of The Smugglers, and the 10th Planet 4, which was William Hartnell's final appearance in the role, and it was thus the first regeneration story. The second Doctor ran from the Power of the Daleks to the War Games, and during that time 53 episodes are missing, and they are as follows. All 6 parts of the Power of the Daleks, which was Trowan's first appearance as the Doctor. The Highlanders, all 4 parts. Last purely historical story before around, I believe it was Tom Baker's era. Yeah, it was Tom Baker's era that they started picking that up again. The Underwater Menace parts 1 and 4. The Moon Base parts 1 and 3. All 4 parts of the Macra Terror, which is the earliest attempt of a dystopian society in science fiction, predating 1984 by George Orwell by around 20 years. This is not the book 1984, this is the film 1984. But, sorry, I just had to clarify that. The Faceless Ones, parts 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. The Evil of the Daleks, parts 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. This is also the last Dalek story until season 9 with Planet of the Daleks. The Abominable Snowman, parts 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The Ice Warriors, parts 2 and 3. The Web of Fear, part 3, which is a very rare example of a piece of media going from lost, found, to lost again, as it was originally found in Nigeria in 2013, along with the other episodes, as well as the Enemy of the World. However, when Philip Morris, who recovered the episodes, was returning them to the BBC back from Nigeria, it was thus stolen, making it missing again. All 6 parts of Fury from the Deep, The Wheel in Space, parts 1, 2, 4, and 5, The Invasion, parts 1 and 4, and The Space Pirates, parts 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. However, originally the situation was much worse, as up until 2013, around 135 episodes were missing in the BBC's archive. They are as thus: The War Machines Part 2, which was recovered in 1978. Also in 1978, The Web of Fear Part 1 was found. In 1981, Death to the Daleks Part 1 was returned by CBC Canada, thus left only Part 1 of The Invasion of the Dinosaurs missing, which was one of 2 Jon Pertwee episodes that were missing at the time. The next year, in 1982, The Abominable Snowman was found, Part 2 was found, along with The Reign of Terror Part 6, later in the year. 1983, Invasion of the Dinosaurs Part 1 was found, which thus completed the Jon Pertwee collection, making him the earliest Doctor that you can watch from start to finish in live action without any animation or missing episodes. Also in 1983, the Daleks Master Plan Parts 5 and 10 were found. In the next year, in 1984, the Celestial Toymaker Part 4 and the Wheel in Space Part 3 were found. In 1985, the Time Meddler Parts 1, 3, and 4 and the War Machines Parts 1, 3, and 4 were found in Nigeria, which thus marked the first time that a complete story was found. Also in 1985, Parts 1, 2, and 3 of The Reign of Terror were found in Cyprus. 2 years later, in 1987, The Faceless Ones Part 3 and The Evil of the Daleks Part 2 were returned by Gordon Hendry. In 1988, the Ice Warriors Parts 1, 4, 5, and 6 were found in Villiers House in England. Skip forward to 1992, all 4 parts of the Tomb of the Cybermen was recovered in Hong Kong, making it one of the only, which made it the first Throughton story in over a while to be complete. It's also worth mentioning that from 1992 to 1999, we didn't have any found episodes. However, we had it was around this period that the audio recordings of many of the missing episodes were recovered. 1994, audio recordings of the Daleks Master Plan Parts 8, 9, and 12, The Massacre, The Savages, The Smugglers, The 10th Planet Part 4, The Power of the Daleks, The Highlanders, The Underwater Menace Parts 1, 2, and 4, The Moon Base Parts 1 and 3, The Macro Terror, The Faceless Ones Parts 2, 4, 5, and 6, The Evil of the Daleks Parts 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, The Abominable Snowman Parts 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6, The Ice Warriors Parts 2 and 3, The Enemy of the World Parts 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, The Web of Fear Parts 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, Fury from the Deep, and The Whale in Space Parts 1, 2, 4, and 5 were found that were returned by Doctor Who fan Graham Strong. It was also worth mentioning that in 1996, a station in Africa contacted the BBC, asking them if they wanted the complete seasons of 1 and 2 back, which would have thus have recovered the then missing Marco Polo, Reign of Terror Parts 4 and 5, and The Crusades Parts 1, 2, and 4. One of those has been found, thankfully, but thus, because they were not returned, they are now considered permanently missing. Also in 1996, audio recordings of Marco Polo, The Reign of Terror Parts 4 and 5, The Crusades Parts 1, 2, and 4, Galaxy 4, The Mythmakers, The Daleks Master Plan Parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 11 were found in The Celestial Toymaker Parts 1, 2, and 3. This virtually made all of the Doctor Who episodes from the black and white era complete, thus only in audio recordings. In 1999, The Crusade Part 1 was found in New Zealand. In 2004, The Daleks Master Plan Part 2 was returned by film collector Francis Watson. Watson had previously worked for the BBC and had owned this episode in his possession for over 30 years and had no clue that it was missing. In 2011, Galaxy 4 Part 3 and The Underwater Menace Part 2 were found and were shown at the Missing Believed Wiped event in December. And in 2013, The Enemy of the World, all 6 parts, and The Web of Fear Parts 2, 4, 5, and 6 were returned to the BBC. Now, the reason I say all for The Enemy of the World, even though episode 3 was in the BBC's archive, it was because film prints of these stories were found incomplete. It just thus wasn't available for a while. Anyway, moving on now to Jon Pertwee. Now, you will be asking me why I have all the Jon Pertwee episodes on DVD and on BritBox or Amazon Prime here. Let me explain. When Jon Pertwee was recovered back in the early years, many of his episodes were only found in film recordings, thus with many of the early ones. However, due to many stations not airing color television at the time, many of Jon Pertwee's episodes were filmed in monochrome and thus sent over to those countries. So when that was found, around 68 of those were found, and 2 of them were missing, as I already explained in the recovered episodes. Anyway, the ones that were only in black and white were the Silurians, all 7 parts, the Ambassadors of Death, parts 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, Inferno, all 7 parts, Terror of the Autons, all 4 parts, The Mind of Evil, all 6 parts, The Cause of Axos, parts 2 and 3, Colony in Space, all 6 parts, The Daemons, parts 1, 2, 3, and 5, The Curse of Peladon, all 4 parts, The Sea Devils, parts 1, 2, and 3, The Mutants, parts 1 and 2, Frontier in Space, parts 1, 2, 3, and 6, Planet of the Daleks 3, Invasion of the Dinosaur, all 6 parts. Part 1 was missing until 1983, as I explained, and Death to the Daleks, part 1, missing until 1981. Moving on. Virtually all of Tom Baker's stories were complete at the time because by that point Doctor Who became popular. However, one story that was originally slated to air for season 17 and as the season finale, called Shada, or Shada as it's pronounced in Australia and the UK, was slated to air. However, a series of union strikes across the UK made it incomplete, made the production of it canceled halfway through production, thus it was not aired. The earliest, and over the years there have been multiple attempts of re-showing Shada of how it was supposed to be. The earliest known clips of Shada that were shown was in 1983 for the 20th anniversary special, The Five Doctors. Tom Baker refused to appear, so thus they used several clips from Shada in this story. However, Shada would not be released completely by itself until 1992, when a special VHS was released using the original location filming as well as a narration by Tom Baker. In 2003, a web series starring Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor, replacing Tom Baker, as he had refused to return to Doctor Who. Big Finish also made an audio drama starring McGann in around 2008. In 2011, Doctor Who fan Anne Levine, who is also a main person who has helped find the missing episodes, gave an idea to the BBC of releasing the animations as... We will get to that in a second anyway. But he gave it an idea of releasing Shada with animation, and thus the BBC actually listened to him, and thus made in 2017 an official animation with the original cast returning to essentially record their lines for the episode. And in 2022, a re-edited version was made for the season 17 Blu-ray. Moving on.
Doctor Who is to take a rest. The BBC announced today that the Time Lord, who's been on our screens for some 22 years now, will be off the air for 18 months. The Doctor Who Appreciation Society is up in arms. They've called the decision horrifying and staggering. Chris Lowe reports.
In 1985, the BBC announced that they would retire Doctor Who for 18, and then would put Doctor Who on a hiatus for 18 months to have new shows made in its place. This essentially canceled, but by this point, season 23 was already in pre-production, and thus everything that was made for season 23 had to be thrown out because they couldn't use it. Because by this point, there was not enough money for Doctor Who to use the big budget that it had. 6 stories comprise this original season 23, and I will go over them for this video of what they were. The season would have opened with a story called The Nightmare Fair. In this, the Doctor and Perry land in Blackpool Amusement Park, but it's not a happy holiday for them, as you should say. As an old enemy of the Doctor, the Celestial Toymaker, who appeared in William Hartnell's era, thus came back and was essentially kidnapping these people and turning them into his playthings, as we saw with the ballerina dolls, the King and Queen of Hearts, the clown dolls from the first story. He essentially took these people and made them into his playthings so that way he can play with them forever. This was so far into production that it literally almost ended up in season 22. This is the exact ending of Revelation of the Daleks.
Peaceful, restful, a panacea for the cares of mind.
Can't we go somewhere fun?
Fun? I suppose anywhere will be peaceful after Necros. All right. I'll take you to...
As you saw in the text, the Colin Baker was originally supposed to say, "I'll take you to Blackpool." However, with season 23 being canceled and a lack of time to film a new ending, they cut it off before he said Blackpool, so replacing it with him saying, "I'll take you to," and then cutting it to the end credits. The next story of this original season 23 was called Mission to Magnus. In this, the Doctor and Perry land in a battle between 2 sets of Ice Warriors. This would have been the Ice Warriors' first appearance since the monster Peladon that was seen in Jon Pertwee's era. The next story of it would have been The Ultimate Evil. In this, a resort planet villain essentially uses a mind control device to turn wholesome people into a raging killer. Moving on to the 4th story of season 23, of this original season 23, it would have been called Yellow Fever. In this, the Doctor and Perry land in Singapore, where the Autons have teamed up with the Master and the Ronnie to essentially end them. This would have been the Autons' return since Terror of the Autons in Jon Pertwee's era. However, this would essentially remove the Autons until the new series started in 2005 with Christopher Eccleston. The next story in this was called The Halls of Time. There's very little information on this as it got so little far into the script writing that this is all we have. Return of the Frontiers from the Peter Davison story of Frontios. In this would have also featured the Master, which would have been one of the final times Anthony Ainley would have played the character of the Master. The season ending of this original season 23 was called The Children of January. In this, so this one never got any releases, as I should say, because there is very little information about this, whereas all these other ones have had some sort of release to give sort of a visual. This one does not, as this is so very far into production and is so mysterious that we virtually have no knowing of what it is. However, the writer of this on his website gave a description of it, and it basically, this is how it goes. Human beings called Zeros, I believe that's how he said it, refers to renegade outcast of a dawning parallel universe civilization that was abandoned. Sorry guys, I stutter a lot. Anyway.
Yes, the TARDIS. There are worlds out there where the sky's burning, where the sea's asleep and the rivers dream. People made of smoke and cities made of song. Somewhere there's danger, somewhere there's injustice, and somewhere else the tea's getting cold. Come on, Ace. We've got work to do.
On December 6, 1989, Doctor Who would come to a 15-year end until 2005 when it was revived. However, by this point, like with the original season 23, season 27 was also into pre-production. In this, the Doctor would have gone on several adventures. However, this one had virtually no knowing of what it was. As many people knew by this point, that Doctor Who has essentially ended. There was no point in coming back after Colin Baker screwed up. But there were several stories that made it into a time where you would have known what it was. One of these stories was called Crime of the Century, and it would have featured the departure of Ace, the Doctor's companion. It would have featured essentially a new person being a mafia boss as his companion, as the daughter of the mafia boss would be the Doctor's companion, and would have also had the mafia boss in his group would have worked with the Doctor, similar to what the Brigadier in the unit did, similar to that. Virtually that, we don't know any more of it. Now, you're asking me, how can I watch all this missing media today? I will get to that now. I will start working backwards from it to essentially explain to you how it was. With the example of the original season 23 and season 27, they were essentially turned into Big Finish audio dramas of a part of the Lost Stories. The season 23 actually is what kicked off the Lost Stories range by Big Finish. The Lost Stories range, sorry. They virtually took all of the stories that were originally planned, except for two. Those were Yellow Fever, because this one did not have a script, and The Children of January. The Hollows of Time, Mission to Magnus, and The Nightmare Fair were included in this first range of Lost Stories range. However, The Ultimate Evil would not be released until season 21. Not season 21, until season 22. 2021 in the sixth season of the Lost Stories range. Sorry for that. With Shada, I already explained how it has been released throughout that, so I won't go through it again. But essentially, all you need to do is just go on Amazon or BritBox, just go on to Amazon, purchase either the season 17 Blu-ray or the Shada DVD that the BBC released. With Jon Pertwee's, there were several ways of bringing back the color to these. The first one was recoveries. While many stations did show black and white in their station at the time, CBC Canada was one of the only stations that showed color television at the time, so thus for that, color copies of the Jon Pertwee stories were made. Several of these that were included in this batch that have been found was Death to the Daleks Part 1, Inferno, and the Terror of the Autons, along with all of the Claws of Axos, which thus made seasons 2 and 3. Color recovery was also used, as the BBC had done an experiment with an episode of Dad's Army called Room at the Bottom, where it only exists in a black and white copy. In these black and white copies, there's essentially an artifact called chromadods that are seen through the recording, because that's essentially telling you this was color transferred to black and white. It thus created it. It usually doesn't work with your phone, as I'm pretty sure you'll try to do this. But what it essentially did was they took those chromadods, put it in a software where it was able to decode the chromadods and put them right back in the right pattern to essentially display Jon Pertwee's episodes in color. Another way that this was worked, another way was that several episodes of Jon Pertwee were shipped from the US on low-quality VHS tapes. The BBC took those low-quality VHS tapes and laid it over the black and white film copy, which essentially made a high-quality color copy. And one of the final ways that this worked was for episode 1 of The Mind of Evil, no chroma dots were in the film print, so thus a color copy could not be recovered using this method. The BBC had to manually colorize it, and this is how they did with the black and white Doctor Who episodes, along with other black and white programs that they own to make it in color. They essentially paint it. They essentially just paint the stills, which, in my opinion, they should have gotten a reward for that. Anyway, now what about the missing Doctor Who episodes from the black and white era? There's 2 ways you can watch this. It's called, these are reconstructions and animation. What the BBC did is that for the reconstructions, a company called Loose Cannon took the audio recordings of the episodes that have been released by the BBC themselves, essentially took any surviving elements of it, whether it was these things called telesnaps, which were essentially photos that were taken from the TV screen on the original broadcast, along with surviving clips, pieced it back together with the audio recording to essentially create a sort of reconstruction. However, the BBC came up with a better idea to release these episodes. Animation. Essentially what they did was they hired an animation company and told them, look, can you animate these episodes using the original audio track? They did this for many of these stories throughout the year, and almost half of the black and white era has been available in the animation. This started in 2006 with The Invasion, picked up again with the Reign of Terror in 2013. Also in 2013, the 10th Planet Part 4 and the Ice Warriors were also released. In 2014, they released the Moon Base with the animation. In 2015, they were originally going to do the Crusade and the Underwater Menace, but those never got off the ground. And the one that did get off the ground was a telesnap reconstruction by the BBC on the DVD release, which is what I owned. I did this back in my did this for a few old videos I did on my Doctor Who collection. I own that. I'll show you that in another video. In 2016, the BBC America decided to fund them, which gave them a wider range, because up to that point, they followed a formula of 2 episodes or less. The first story that was completely lost, that was animated in its entirety, was the Power of the Daleks in 2016. 2017, Shada was animated. 2019, the Macra Terror was released. In 2020, the Fury from the Deep and the Faceless Ones were animated. In 2021, the Web of Fear was animated, which eventually put the animations on a hiatus. Also later that year, The Evil of the Daleks was animated and has been the most critically acclaimed Doctor Who story that has been animated, and it has mostly been linked with the Macra Terror. Those are actually 2 of my favorite animations. If you ever take my advice, watch those 2 first. And 2022, the animation range came to a little bit of an end for a little bit with The Abominable Snowman. In 2023, the BBC announced for the 60th anniversary, they would pick up the animations again. In 2023, we had The Underwater Menace finally released with an animation. And then about a few weeks ago, the Celestial Toymaker was released. This used the same animation style as the Web of Fear. However, in my view, the Celestial Toymaker was a little bit better. I'm not saying it's perfect. I would have preferred it in 2D. However, this one is still good, and I would highly recommend watching it. I hope you guys loved it. Like this video, make sure to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications so you don't miss any of my future videos. I love you all so much, and bye.